Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Eric Grant with Sailrite. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to make your own channeling out of vinyl seating fabric. This type of channeling has a blind stitch, but each one of the foam pieces that are inserted inside the channel are actually separate pieces. So you get a deeper channeling than you normally would doing it with just a blind stitch approach. You may be asking, what's the name of this type of channeling? Well, it's typically called tuck and roll. Let's get started.
It's now time to show you how to make your very own tuck and roll channeling. Channeling is sometimes referred to as pleats. We need to calculate for the pleat size and the number.
So the first thing we need to do is determine the size of the foam that needs to be inserted in each one of these channels, and also the calculations on how many channels are required for your particular project. So it's math, it's kind of boring, but let's show you how it's done.
The size of the pleat or channeling is up to you. We chose an approximate pleat of 2 inches. Take the desired length size of your panel and divide it by the desired pleat width. Then round it to the nearest whole number. That's the number of pleats. Take your desired finished length again and divide it by the rounded number. This is the width of each one of the foam pieces. For us, that's 2.14 inches. And for a desired finish size of 15 inches, we need 7 pleats.
So this is our 1/2 inch sew foam. It has a fabric backing, not that that's necessary for this application, but it's a 1/2 inch, and you can see I cut it to 6 inches, and then I marked it to our width that we just talked about. You can easily cut this with scissors, and for this project I need 7 pieces because we're doing 7 channels for this sample. So we're going to cut this 7 times, and we'll show you what's next.
More calculations. We'll now be calculating for the backer fabric size and then marking it.
If you look at the back side of this channeled piece, this sample piece, you can see that there's a fabric backing. That fabric backing is used to create the openings for the foam.
Here you can see the foam being pushed into that opening that the fabric backing and the vinyl fabric that's sewn to it created. So we'll need to cut a backing fabric to size, and here are the calculations for that equation. You need to take the number of pleats times the foam's cut width plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and that's the cut length. Then the desired height of the panel plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and that's the cut height.
This is my backing piece. I've cut it to 6 inches in height, and we have a 1/2 inch here for seam allowance and a 1/2 inch here, and we need to mark each one of our foam pieces, and we determined that they were 2 1/8. So right here we'll put a mark, and I'm actually going to move this across and do that all the way down here, and then we're going to strike parallel lines at each one of these locations. So as you can see, they fit between each one of our marks on the backing material. So this is exactly what we want all the way to here.
Before we can move on, we have to sew a test piece. We're going to show you how to do that next.
We need a vinyl fabric for the top side. What you need to do to determine how much fabric is required is cut 2 pieces from your fabric backing. This is a decking fabric available from Sailrite, and another piece out of the vinyl that you're going to be using. These are 6 by 6 inch squares. I've cut a piece of scrap backing. This is called a decking fabric from Sailrite, and this is a scrap piece of our vinyl that we're going to be using. I highly recommend using the vinyl you're going to be using. This is EverSoft Smooth. It has a texture that is very faint on the top side. Great vinyl fabric available from Sailrite. I struck a line that's perpendicular to this edge, and this is totally square. What I want to do is I want to sew this together and determine the size of our vinyl. So we're going to take one of our foam pieces and this over to the sewing machine. I also struck a line on my vinyl fabric about 1 inch or 2 from the edge, and this is obviously 1 inch or 2 from the edge for the fabric backing. So to determine the size of our vinyl, no matter the size or thickness of the foam that we're using, just simply line up the 2 lines, folding your vinyl on that line, and place it on your scrap. So the line's directly on top, And then you want to sew about an 1/8 inch from the fold in a straight stitch, and I'm doing a 3 millimeter stitch length, and I'll do a little bit of reversing here even though this is just a piece to determine the size. So sew down this edge, a little bit of reversing there. Okay, now we can take this out and we'll take our foam that we cut after doing our calculations, lay it in here, fold the vinyl over, and what you want to do is you want to make this as tight as you'd like. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but you really should be fairly snug in here. And sometimes you can even take a straight edge like this one and kind of push it down. And then what I'll do is I'll take my pin, I think that looks pretty good right there, and I'll mark right here where I think it should be attached to the vinyl. And let's see, does that look good? Yeah, I think that's going to look pretty good. So that's my mark. I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to put this mark on this side, right where it is on the opposite side. My pen's not marking very well. There it goes. Yeah, so it's directly over there. Now what we should do is we should measure, and then we should sew it to make sure that we're happy. So let's measure this from the edge of our vinyl, and what I get is about 2 15/16. So I'm going to write that on here, 2 15/16.
That measurement, 2 15/16 for us, is the calculated pleat size for the vinyl that we'll be using. Now let's test it to make sure we're happy.
First we need to strike a line here that's parallel to this line. So I'm going to do that real quick. I should also strike a line that's 2 1/8, which is right there on this piece, because that's actually the calculations for our backing fabric. So right there is the line there. And now we'll take our foam, we'll insert it in here, we'll push the foam back to make sure I don't sew through it. We'll fold on this line of the vinyl, and we'll match up this line with the line that we struck on the backing fabric. And we're going to sew right down there. And I'm not going to reverse because this is just something that they were trying to confirm that we like the way it looks. I'm not sewing through my foam. No reversing. And let's check it out. If we don't like it, we can make modifications, but this is what you're going to basically get. Is that tight enough for your desired looks? I believe that it is, so I think our calculations are just about right. That looks good to me.
Now that we know the calculated pleat size for the vinyl, we can cut it and mark the vinyl to size.
So what I do is I take cardboard or a template piece. This is just a template piece. We mark the 1/2 inch on the ends for our seam allowance, because that's where the channeling is going to end. And then we mark 2 15/16 here, here, and here, and we'll use this as a template to create our vinyl.
To calculate for the vinyl seating's fabric size, take the number of pleats times the calculated pleat size plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and that's the fabric's cut length, and then take the desired height of the panel plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and that's the vinyl seating fabric's cut height.
So I've placed marks, you can see right here on my vinyl for those locations on this side. And I'm going to do the exact same thing in here on this side using our template. And then I'll move it down. And obviously we want to skip the 1/2 inch at this point, because you only want the 1/2 inch on the ends. And then we're going to strike lines across from each one of these points.
Sewing the pleats, or what's called channeling, is next.
As you can see, the vinyl fabric is much longer than our backing or our decking fabric. We're going to take our decking fabric, this is the back side of the vinyl, we're going to lay it directly on top of this, and it should fit perfectly all the way to the edge, like that. So make sure that it's perfectly parallel with that. And this is the 1/2 inch seam allowance. So we're going to sew that first by turning it over here, and I'm going to put the magnetic guide on at a 1/2 inch. and we're going to sew along that edge. I'm going to do a little bit of reversing. And that's all. Okay, we're going to open up our backing or our decking, and our vinyl's over here. Now we're going to take our foam piece, we're going to lay it on top of that decking, and I've marked the line a little bit heavier with a pen so you can see it. And we're going to push this over a little bit to this side. Then we're going to fold on this line. It doesn't really crease well because it's a vinyl fabric. And I'm going to push the foam back and line it up with that line on our backing or our decking fabric. Okay, and push the foam back because you don't want to sew through the foam. And we're right on that line. And all I'm going to do is put this in the machine, and we're going to sew that same distance that we did earlier, making sure we do a little bit of reversing. Push that foam back if it isn't back already, and you can see that line there. I hope that you can. And just sew down this edge. And then when you get to the end, do a little bit of reversing there. Okay, there's the first one. Take it out, cut your threads, and then we're going to put another piece of foam in here. I just dropped my nippers, and we're going to put the fabric side down. Probably wouldn't matter if it's up, but I like it down. And then we're going to lay this over, create a fold right there, and match it up to the line on our decking, pushing our foam out of the way, making sure that its edges are matched up. And we're going to repeat this process for all 7 layers. Let's just show you this one last time, and then we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Put it in. A little bit of reversing. Push the foam back so you're not sewing through it. Make sure it's on the line. And sew. And a little bit of reversing. And we're going to repeat the process all the way to the end, and we'll show you what's next. We are on the last one. Now the last one, you don't actually roll it. You actually just put the foam in there, and then you match up the edges, and you sew a 1/2 inch across. So you basically line it up. So, and you can do this without the foam in it. Sometimes it's easier for the last one, and then just stuff the foam in, and I'll show you how to do that. So all I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put my magnetic guide back on at the 1/2 inch, and we're going to sew across this, and then we'll show you how to reinsert the foam. So we're just going to do this and go to the table. So I have some masking tape, and I'm just going to put it under here. This is a really easy piece to insert because it's small, but let's say it were long. So what I want to do is I want to fold this over, and then I want to basically wrap this so that it's tight on the end and make it a little bit smaller, like that. And now you can insert the foam easily, even if it were a long piece. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way here. So you can go in here like this, and then when you reach the other end, you can basically take off your tape assembly and then push your foam back in there, and then just simply pull down the remainder. Okay, so now you want to push the foam in so that it's nice and flat, and you can work things out with a flat object if you need to just to get everything to lay nice and neat. And this piece is done. So here's your 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you have perfect pleats on each end like that. And when you sew a piece onto this, which we're going to do shortly here, you'll see how nice it does look. But this is the results. So did we make it to our exacting dimensions? Yes, we did. 16 inches. Take away the 1/2 inch, and that would result in 15 inch, just like we want. So perfect size.
We'll be adding an adjacent fabric panel on this demo piece.
I've cut a 16 inch piece, which will match the length of that, and I'm going to put 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas and upholstery along the edge so I can pre-baste it in place and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I won't be sewing through this double-sided tape, but I can be assured that I like it. So I'm going to peel it off. Outside surfaces would face each other like this. We're basically going to start, let's just start with this end over here. We're going to start to match it up here and then match it up along here, right along the vinyl. And this is just to show what it would look like as a finished piece on our sample. And if you've done it right, when you come down here, this should match up as well, like that. So let's take that to the machine and sew it. So we're sewing at a 1/2 inch, and I have my magnetic guide on there. And I'm still doing about a 3 millimeter stitch length. And you do have to have a pretty heavy duty machine to do this. An ultra feed will work great as well. And I am kind of helping it push it in there. But hey, take a look at that. And then we could do a top stitch here. But that is our sample piece. And it really does look great. We didn't show it, but we also put a top stitch in this. And on the back side, if you'd like, this excess foam at this edge can be trimmed with scissors to make the transition a little bit smoother. This piece also could have some sew foam on it, so the transition is a little bit smoother from piece to piece, but that's a choice that you can make yourself if you'd like.
We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. See the full tools and materials list in the description below. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.